Do you have any advice on how to rebound naturally after taking PEDs? It kind of depends on what PEDs we're talking about. So if we're talking about removing an anabolic, I mean, this is something that, frankly, there's going to be some come down in both like the physique and the changes in the composition, because you're probably not going to retain 100% of what you saw, what you experienced while on cycle. Removing it, a lot of people do report that it's pretty discouraging. They're like, okay, well, yeah, I may have built some muscle, but I still don't have that same pop. And that's something that I know it can be mentally very hard. But the reality is, like, your opportunity cost of just leaving it in is, if you do decide to leave it in, you're looking at potentially exposing yourself to the risk of virilization, whereas making sure that, okay, I'm getting the most out of it while it's in, knowing that the look I have is going to be very enhanced, very augmented, and even if I retain 80% of that look, okay, that's good enough for me. I think that you need to have a very level head when it comes to expectations post-cycle. I think, for one, putting yourself in a position where you're only running it for the duration that is truly needed, putting yourself in a position where you can capitalize on building muscle is a good way to avoid really that rebound post-cycle. A lot of people who remove it post prep, I mean, like, they're going to find that, like, yeah, like, I got really lean and I had a really good fullness and depth to my muscles. And then as soon as I remove it, it feels like I lost a bunch of muscle. Well, it really wasn't muscle that you put on. I mean, like, it can be pretty powerful. And like in the case where I've used 2.5 milligrams of Anavar, 5 milligrams of Anavar, once removing it, I mean, that pop dissipates pretty quickly. Now, if we're talking about removing a different kind of PED, a non-androgenic, it really depends on the kind of PED we're talking about and the effect that we got from that PED. If it's something like a fat loss agent, Clen, T4, T3, you can expect slight downregulation of what felt like metabolic function in the case of thyroid hormone, that quite literally is metabolic function, but you're removing something that was altering the state, I guess, really the balance of energy that you were in at the point of taking it. So by removing it, yes, you're going to have to be more conservative with food if the goal is to try to mitigate any unnecessary body fat gain. But this isn't something that is going to be like a 500 calorie difference. I mean, unless we're talking about very high doses of maybe both those drugs, and you're talking about like using them for an extended duration of time, in addition to, at the point of removal, also lowering cardio, also increasing food dramatically. Yeah, I mean, like, that rebound itself could be pretty abrupt and mentally very challenging to deal with. So that's where I would take more of a conservative approach, rather than remove both at the same time, in addition to a decrease in cardio, increasing food. I would go about it in a very systematic fashion. So I would potentially remove the Clen, drop off some of the cardio, raise food, but not to, an excessive point. Maybe leave the T4, T3 in after the show for maybe a week or two. But once you've leveled out, once you've found, some stable footing, maybe then at that point, remove the T4, T3. Ultimately, you're going to see the weight come back on. And I know that can be very off-putting, especially if it's something that you struggle with. But that's where I think that being more conservative will favor you in the long run.